Hello, everyone. Welcome to another IT Career Talk with Professionals. And today, we have an End User Computing Group Manager. Ang haba ng title, right? And our guest is Miss Christine Amarra. Miss Christine, can you say hi to our audience?
Hi.
So let's get into it and ask, what is your role? Can you describe for us your role? No, mahaba siya. No? I think maybe you can chop it down, like what is end computing and things
Yeah.
like that.
Okay, yeah. It's a mouthful for a title. It's an end user computing group manager, meaning I handle the end user computing group in our office.
Mm-mm.
The end user computing manager basically caters to the needs of the end users. Who are the
Mm.
end users in our company? Because I work for a university, our we have a very wide base of end users: faculty, administrators, staff, sometimes, and even rather indirectly, students.
Mm.
So the gist of my role is we cater to the needs of the end users. So this pertains to different hardware, computers, printers, etc. Even software. So what software would a university subscribe to? And sometimes even other end user needs. So troubleshooting would be one of it. Help desk support is one. Sometimes even to the extremes of exploring new tools, new technologies, because we
Mm.
want to see, is this something that the end user would need. So there was even a time when we would try to figure out how to put up a teleconferencing system for office and so on,
Mm.
for
Mm.
conference room. So yeah.
Right, right. No? So what are these skills, skills or skill set that is needed to be in your position and even in your department in general?
Right now, the bulk of my work would deal with project management, in a way accounts management, because we talk to a lot of people,
Mm.
and a lot of systems analysis also is involved. So sometimes they would ask us, okay, we have this issue, or we want to improve this one, when we're there to try to figure out what's the best solution or what's the best approach and so on, or even evaluating certain software, certain solutions.
Right, right. No. So how does that go about in terms of hiring? No, for example, a person would like to join your department or um, go into that line of work. How do they get hired? Is there a particular do they need to finish a particular course? Is there a certificate that they need to accomplish and to get into that line of work?
Right now, we're not very strict with certification.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in my unit, we have two types of, let's say, positions. One is the technician, so they would have to have some IT background and experience. Actually, I don't even really require an IT graduate. They don't have to graduate IT, but they have to have experience in, let's say, troubleshooting computers. They need to know how to fix computers and
Mm-hmm.
so on, even troubleshooting printers and so on, because it's the bulk of the requests.
Mm-hmm.
But the other position that's available under my group would be more of a project manager and systems analyst, with a mix of, let's say, in a way, programming, because there's still a little bit involved in that.
Right, right. So since you mentioned programming, no, is do you still code or is your team active in coding? And if so, what stack or what languages do you guys use?
Right now, me per se, not exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I would, I don't know if you count it as programming, but sometimes configuring Excel to be able to extract information, but it's not straightforward programming. I know there would be a few times I'd have to learn some scripts. Not very strict. I mean, let's just say sometimes it's for Microsoft Shell scripting,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes JavaScript, but it varies. It really, really depends on the need, because yeah, we do a lot of other stuff. But right now, one of the persons under my group, um, what does she use? She uses JavaScript, I think. Actually, to briefly explain, we also use a lot of Google apps in our office,
Right,
because
right.
we mainly use Google Mail, Gmail for most of our tasks, and we
Mm-hmm.
also use Google Forms and so on. So We do use a lot of scripting for Google Sheets actually. So mail merge, it's hybrid of mail merge and automated emails. So there's a lot of scripting involved with that one. I can't exactly remember what scripting it is, but I think it's a mix of JavaScript and Google Script, if there's such a thing.
Right, right, right. I also forgot the name. It's like the in the Google Forms and Google, and you can
Yeah.
put like a Google script to do some calculations. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. Exactly that.
Right, right, right. No? So great, great. So siguro since you are a manager now, and you said you are managing two sets of team, more or less the technicians and also the project managers. Can you describe for us your management style?
My management style is more of, well, I don't really like to micromanage unless, of
Mhm.
course, um, when I really need to follow up on certain things. But it's more of I'd let I'd like to let the people under me manage their own time with with an understanding of what the goals are or what we need to accomplish within a certain period of time. So as much as possible, I just try to get updates from them. I delegate certain tasks and so on, and then I leave it up to them on how they would do certain things. Of course, for new tasks or relatively new assignments, I would have to walk them through it. But once it runs smoothly, then I just let them do.
Right,
So
right.
as long as nothing bad happens or there's no major issues, it's essentially that.
Right. And since you were mentioning about new items or new tasks, how about for new employees? How do you onboard or how do you train um, new employees into your team, especially given in any company or any team, there's not always there's a certain set of practices that is only potentially learned in your department or in your team, right? So how is that your responsibility? Is that um, HR's responsibility, or how do you basically onboard them?
Ah, yeah, that's a good question. HR usually onboards them for the basic rules of the university, so what's expected of an employee and so on.
Mm.
But because our office is a very um, at least it's in terms of skill sets and so on. There are things that only our office
Right,
can
right.
train our people on. We
Mm.
handle our own trainings also. So for a new hire, we would normally orient them on what they are expected to do. In terms of training, it normally depends on what type of work they're expected to do. So
Mm-hmm.
um, most of the time we get somebody with some experience, and of course if we do need to train, then that's when we sign them up. Either um, we look for online resources or we sign them up for actual training sessions.
Right, right. And since your team is the end user, no, and unfortunately or fortunately now the end users are not anymore in a central location, not anymore in a campus. Does this how does this affect your team? And what are the challenges of the remote working? No, for example, you mentioned, let's say, printing, printer troubleshooting. Does that mean your team has to go to the professors and even other houses to just troubleshoot their computers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I guess very briefly also explaining our office's function. We cater
Mm.
mainly to the central admin office because we're a central
Mm.
office. Thankfully, it's just limited to that, with a few other offices that don't have their own IT. Some of the offices would also have their own IT,
Mm.
and leave it up to them to manage that for now. But okay, ever since we went into lockdown mode, we didn't have a problem adjusting to online work because technically, being an IT office, you can work anywhere. But for troubleshooting, yes, that was a challenge. My technicians were rather creative in that aspect. Well, they would in the early stages of the pandemic, there would be online a lot of calls, so
Right,
they would
right.
have to talk to the person and walk them through the troubleshooting process.
Mm-hmm.
The worst case scenario is they would teach them how to install those
Remote
shared,
desktops.
yes, remote
Right.
desktops. Yes, yes.
Mm.
So they would do that. At least they can go into to the client's computer and check what needs to be done. Yeah, so they've been pretty creative. I remember someone also was describing that one of the ways they tried to troubleshoot a person's computer was they used the phone and they asked the person to point. They did a video call. I think it was
Mm-mm.
Viber or Messenger. I cannot remember what. Then they had to go through the process of troubleshooting through that. So they would show the Viber or Messenger on the screen, and he will try to direct the person. So it was challenging, but they were creative enough to figure out. And
Cool.
then in some cases, there would, I mean, the campus is essentially still closed, but
Mm.
on of course there are certain things that you really need to be done physically while maintaining social distancing and all those protocols. There are times we would have to get a computer, pull it out, and then do tech support stuff and that, or install or reinstall.
Mm.
So yeah, we would have to work on a schedule, figure out when they would be on campus to handle that, and schedule that one.
Right, right, right. Let's pause a little bit on these, no, and understand more on the journey, no, because since a lot of our audience are quite young and they want to see, no, how does one become a manager, or how does one rise up in the ranks, in corporate, even in academe, no? So maybe we can start off our our recollection on maybe how you entered the IT field, no? Maybe let's say before college, or if you have any stories even before that. Um, Paano mo pinili yung course mo, in other words?
All right, it's a very interesting story, a question,
Mm.
and she have an unusual answer for that because let's just say, admittedly, before college, I never knew what you actually do in computer science. When I
Wow,
was in high
okay.
school, when I was thinking of what to take for college, I actually
Mm.
thought that, oh, I want to learn how to do those computer animation and so on.
Computer animation. Okay, all right, all right, all right.
Let's just say that in high school, I was very much into the arts. I
Mm.
would draw, I like to paint, and so on. So I was thinking, okay, what can I do with a career
Mm.
in with that, with yeah, with art and so on.
Mm.
So I thought computer animation would be something cool because it was when you had all these interesting Disney movies and everything.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I decided to try computer science. And let's just say that, long story short, when I went to Ateneo, I found it completely different from what I expected.
Right, right,
It was
right.
At the time it was hard to shift out because my grades were kind of not very good.
Mm-hmm.
That it was hard to shift another course. So I stuck it out. So I decided to stay. And then let's just say that towards the latter part of I think my third or fourth year in college, I was invited to become a teaching assistant. So
Mm-hmm.
interestingly enough, I became a teaching assistant. I thought, well, why not? Why not try making a career out of teaching? So when I graduated from college, I was actually out looking for other work elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But we also got in because we were teaching assistants in college. We were invited back because I think it was around the time that a lot of teachers left for to study, and
Mm-hmm.
there were a lot of openings. So they hired quite a number from our batch, and we were accepted. I taught for about 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a little challenging. I mean, like, it was a completely different set of but it was fun. It was just challenging, but
Right, right.
um, and it was also hard because you were also expected to finish your master's degree within a certain
Mm.
period of
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So after teaching, I decided to try research because I also found it interesting. Research in terms of IT. And we were focusing on mobile apps, mobile development at the time, and a lot of interesting things. So I moved to a different office and did research.
Mm-hmm.
And then after some time, well, I would still teach in the site. So
Mm-hmm.
not full time, but on the side. And from there, I think, forgot exactly. I know, I think I felt a little bit, I wanted to grow. So I
Mm-hmm.
parang, at the moment I decided to resign, there was this opening in the IT office, in the central IT. So I thought I'll try it out.
Right, right,
And
right.
yeah, ever since, yeah.
Ever since there, no. Very interesting, no. So basically, you didn't one area of computer animation, no? Some of our audiences might be, computer games, or maybe movies, or even theater, and then end up in computer, eventually stuck it out there, and eventually made a career out of it, no? Great story. Um, Aside from IT and teaching, do you have anything that you are also passionate about? Like I can see art is, at your background. Is that still a passion that you have, or do you even try to marry that at the moment, art and computer, or right now it's mostly really IT in terms of IT field?
Right now, it's mostly IT. Art, well, it just so happens that my parents are also very much into art. So we do
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of this right now. And yes, because of our family business, we do picture frames. We go to a lot of art exhibits. I guess it's a way, it's one way of um, keeping myself busy, interested
Mm-hmm.
in that field. But in terms of do I still do art and computer at the same time? I guess yes and no. Because
Mm-hmm.
again, because of the pandemic, we've been doing a lot of online events. I mean, it's completely not related to my well, semi related to the work because one of the tasks that we would do as end user computing group before pre-pandemic is that we would handle the live stream events of
Mm-hmm.
certain live stream events in the university. So this means that I would deploy my technicians on site, let's say for the graduate, okay, big
Mm-hmm.
events,
Graduation.
graduation
All right.
or institutional masses and so on. We would deploy them because we would have a computer connected to the internet and then make it stream it to either YouTube or Facebook at the
Mm-hmm.
time. That
Mm-hmm.
was pre-pandemic, and it was still very, very rough because we would connect it to OBS and do the
Yes.
whole computer. Well, the camera setup would be from somebody else, but
Mm-hmm.
they would plug it into computers and so on. So there's a very tedious process. So now that we were doing things online, it all shifted to either Google Meet and then stream to OBS or YouTube, Zoom, then straight to YouTube or something like that. So that was one interesting thing that we had to learn. We all had to learn how to conduct events online.
Right. Right.
But sorry, digressing. Because I also do it on the side.
Mm-hmm.
I would also help people out. Some of the things that I would do is to try to find a nice way to present. So there's a little bit of art or creativity involved because, okay, how do you lay out the PowerPoint so it looks nice? I mean, it's not really IT, and it's not really art, but it's making sure that it looks good.
Right.
So,
Right. No. And I guess with all of these online visual presentations, really have to pop now, no, because you don't have those other forms like maybe your body language, not so much, and so the visual arts really need to be like on point.
you have to grab people's attention. Kasi
Right.
parang yun
Mm-hmm.
yung I forgot how many, the 30-second rule or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Diba? Attention spans are shorter now.
Yes, yes, yes. No. So just a couple more questions lang, no, I have for you. So in terms of, when your students or former students look at your career and they say, wow, very interesting career and very successful career in terms of, from college, TA, instructor, and then move to mobile, and now even manager for quite some time. How do you yourself measure your own success, or like what milestones are you aiming for, and basically how do you say that you're successful? How do you define your own success?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question.
Mm.
I haven't really thought about it much, but it's more of because again a slight deviation, but
Mm.
sometimes also because we would have a lot of new technologies, we would train people how to use it. So recently we did workshops on Google because
Mm.
we had to teach. I mean, because it's a pandemic and we had to get them to know how to use certain things. So it would be touching to hear people say, "Oh, thank you for your workshop. I've learned a lot because of this." Or maybe even indirectly, you would see them actually use the tools, and you know that you generally, me and our office mates would help. We're the ones who would train them on how to use it. So it's touching to know that they're actually adapting the tools that we're teaching them, or they're actually using it, um, or I guess, okay, digressing also a little bit, but it, there's a point to it.
Mm,
let's just say that Ateneo did not have a central IT office for a long time. So it's now that they're starting to see the value of a central IT. So they're starting to realize, oh yes, we need to talk to the IT office before we implement this,
mm, mm, mm,
or so on. So it's one way of, I guess, seeing that what we're doing is not in vain.
mm, mm, mm.
Yeah.
Right. No? So I can parang basically your success is basically when other people are able to parang you're able to touch other people's lives and they're adopting your tool and you can see that the as a whole your team is being valued by the central is it called
By the
central by the
university.
university itself no right no? And our last question is more towards your advice to our graduating students especially now that they might be entering into a very different um, market no, or very different circumstance. So, what would your advice be to them? Imagine a graduate. I'm not sure if you're still active. You have a class or you're still teaching any of these classes in, in the university, but just in case one of them, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I guess figure out. Well, it's hard to say figure out what you like because it can
Mm-hmm.
change.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like knowing when to stick it out and also having the discipline to try to do your work. But at the same time, also without being a damper to the whole thing, but trying to also find what interests you. Find what interests you, but also at the same time trying to keep yourself updated.
Right. And maybe some people ask, I really want to have that discipline and I want to be updated. How do you have like maybe something concrete that you can advise them to start off with to build that discipline
Yeah.
and to be more updated?
This is actually what I kind of learned in the pandemic. Kasi parang, because it's all work from home right now.
Mm-hmm.
So things that you do at work, I mean, because there's no physical boundaries between work and your personal life.
Right.
It's really trying to set the boundaries. So that's one way to discipline. So when it's time to work, really do work. When it's time to rest, really take a break.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you can get burned out. In terms of keeping yourself updated, it helps if you have an interest in the field because yes, while you're not working, sometimes it's nice to keep yourself updated by reading what's up in I mean, checking what's out in the news, or even updating yourself with what's uh, what's out there. Because like example for tools for teaching,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of had to keep ourselves updated because we kind of need to know what to recommend to the teachers, or if they would look for certain tools, they would ask us, "Oh, is this something that we need?" So we have to be in a position to know how to answer it, or do research or do diligence on figuring out if it's something that we should get or not.
Right. No. And singit lang ako, one last na talaga, no? In terms of in the same area of advice, no? If imagine you had to give yourself advice when you graduated, parang now that you know now, and giving yourself your own an advice to the time that you were graduating, what would you say to yourself?
Yeah, that's also an interesting question. I guess it's more of being more decisive with what you want. Let's just say, again,
Mm-hmm.
when I graduated, I really made. I really decided from the beginning that I did not want to do industry. I felt more
Mm,
inclined to academic because I wanted something a little bit more. I mean, not. Yeah, I value the balance.
mm,
So I guess in a way, what I would have wanted to tell myself is also try to explore. Try. I mean, not that being an academic is bad, but it's also nice to explore and see what else is out there. Um, or even, yeah,
but
actually, it's
yeah, but you did explore, no? Parang after 3 years, you did explore the mobile area, which was interesting, no? So yeah, cool.
or I guess it's not being afraid to try out stuff because I know I turned
Mm.
down a few projects
Ah,
because parang ganyan. So yeah, Sorry, dog and cat were fighting.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, yeah, actually, that's true. No, don't be afraid of projects. I think that's also one of the things I would like to the audience to pick up is that when you try out things, don't be afraid to fail because anyway, usually there's a safety net naman around you. Your team will support you, your managers will support you, and even the academe will support you in that sense.
Oh, but if you do that, make sure you keep them updated para hindi lang sila
Ah,
mabigla.
that's true. That's true.
So they don't have this. I mean, at least they'll feel more. What do you call this? They'll feel more compassionate. If it fails, they know that you tried your best. Hindi
Right,
lang
right.
you do something, then you fail, then they won't know why or
Mm-mm.
something like that.
True, true, true. No?
But yeah,
Parang, no, parang no sideways na parang, I'm
yes,
gonna
yes.
try this. Kahit bawal. Parang,
Uh,
dapat hindi siya
parang
bawal.
heads up.
Parang, heads up, I wanna try this. Parang ganun. Ganun.
Yeah.
As long as hindi bawal, di okay lang yun. Parang ganun.
Oh yeah, and then one more thing to add. I'm sorry, Baba. Knowing
Sige.
also your limits, because like you don't want to keep on accepting stuff. I mean, it's not bad to try out something new, but you also don't want to stretch yourself too thin. So yeah,
Right,
knowing
right.
your limits.
Know your limits. Alright. Parang maintain that well-roundedness, life balance ka. Right.
Yes.
Discipline. Alright, that's it. Thank you so much. No, I really enjoyed our conversations, and I think audiences, if you have any follow up or any kind of questions that you wanna ask, don't forget you can always leave it in the comment. Read our description also, so you can understand and get the full information. Um, and that's it. Thank you everyone, and goodbye. Ay, may pa-shoutout ka ba dyan, Miss Christina Mara? Kung meron lang, no? Kung meron lang.
None, but yeah, I hope you think hard and well on what you want to do for a career, for an IT career. But yes, there's a big field out there, and they need a lot of IT people in every aspect. As in, IT is very prevalent right now.
High demand tayo, guys. So, right.
So you won't run out of jobs. You won't run out of options. You can actually come up with your own career if you want to. Because, ano ba, yung mga entrepreneurship, ang dami mga entrepreneurial projects, endeavors pala that involve a lot of IT.
That's true. All right. Thank you again. And everyone, I hope you learned something. And goodbye. Bye. And of course, guys, if you like our content, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell.